I packed my entire life and vanished before morning. 3 days later, I heard news that froze my blood. If this kind of story grips you, stick around till the end and share it with someone who needs a reminder about loyalty. The evening light poured across the timber porch of Ethan Cole's Colorado home like honey sliding over a cutting board. Below the rail, a sweep of lodgepole pines drank in the last warmth of the day. Beyond them, the Rockies stood ragged and blue like the spine of some sleeping animal. Ethan braced both hands on the oak baluster and listened to the small, practical sounds of his world, the wind teasing the copper rain chain, the slow tick of the porch thermometer, a hawk's chalk screech farther down the canyon. He had come to this ridge with nothing but grit and a vision. 16 years later, Cole luxury retreats dotted a triangle from Telluride to Jackson to Big Sky Havens, where venture capitalists and film producers paid obscene nightly rates to pretend discomfort while their cocktails never fell below 42 degrees. People called it luck. Ethan knew better up before dawn hands in the plumbing when a pipe blew at -10, smiling through a billionaire's tantrum about artisanal coffee foam choosing guides who could read clouds like contracts. His phone lay face down beside a chipped mug. The call he'd taken earlier had left a pleasant ache in his chest. Emily, bright and breathless, ticking down a checklist with the focus of a launch director. Venue string trio menu, done, 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 she had said, and Ethan had heard the pride she tried to smother. Emily was Julia's girl, but the day cancer swallowed Julia, an 8-year-old with a scraped knee bravado, had looked up at Ethan and asked if he'd still come to her school play. He had missed exactly one thing since, and that was the morning a blizzard triple-closed the pass and the river and his own sense of contempt for physics. When Emily was 6, a drunk driver found the wrong lane and ended the life of her biological father in a punctuation of glass and steel. Emily lived spine-fractured and met a new geometry of the world from a chair. It never made her smaller. It taught her angles and leverage and a stubborn streak that could move granite. Ethan had promised Julia that he would match that stubbornness ounce for ounce. Clara came later, a flare of auburn hair and museum-quality cheekbones at a conservation gala in Santa Fe. She had the kind of social ease that turned a room into a soft-focus commercial and the gift of remembering names with weaponized charm. When she stepped into their lives, Emily was 16, all Code Camp t-shirts and dry wit. Clara seemed to absorb the presence of the chair with a warm, offhand acceptance Ethan had clocked as grace. 8 years on, there were cracks in the glaze. A certain crispness to Clara's tone when business intruded, an uptick in overnight board retreats, a perfume he couldn't name soaked into scarves that didn't smell like home. Now the porch door sighed open, and Clara drifted out with a stemless glass lavender ice clinking. Thinking about work again, she asked, wrapping her arms around his waist and laying her cheek between his shoulder blades. He kept his hands on the rail, studying where sunset bruised into indigo. Just taking in what we've built. You mean what you built? The laugh was small, a little too sharpened at the edges. Ethan shifted so her face came into the fringe of light, nearly 50 and still arresting. The auburn caught the last sun like a match head. Your connections turned a good idea into a great wait list, he said, and left the rest unsaid, that those connections had been scheduling him out of pictures lately. She took a sip. The Wilderness Conservation Board invited me to Jackson Hole next month, 3rd retreat in 2 months. It's important networking. She added a touch preemptive. Ethan nodded, and a sliver of quiet slid between them. Years of hospitality had taught him to read a breath the way a poker player read a blink, a guest exaggerating his backcountry grit, a competitor with too many vowels in a new holding company, his wife turning a smile into a shield. They ate late in a kitchen washed with island pendants and the slow swing of a copper pot rack. After Clara disappeared toward the soaking tub with a robe and a curated face serum, Ethan loaded the dishwasher by instinct, the way you learn a person's quirks by where they set the spatula. His phone buzzed and Emily's name brightened the glass. "Hey, kid," he said, the word warmed by habit. Emily's voice scampered happily through details, the accessible parking, the favorite Debussy piece, the champagne someone owed them at wholesale. The totals wobbled, though she admitted sheepish. "I added 3 guests from Mom's, from Clara's list, and upgraded a few things. We're at $2,800 for the final payments." Ethan leaned against the counter, smiling at the way she pre-apologized for excellence. "Send me the invoice," he said. "Consider it handled." He could almost hear her exhale. After the call, he pushed the transfer from his laptop, then hovered over a folder whose name he'd chosen to look boring: verification. The app wasn't magic, just a tool administrators used to find lost phones or monitor usage, but configured creatively, it would mirror texts and location pings when a device kissed their home Wi-Fi. Ethan didn't like doing it, but he liked where his mind went without facts even less. Trust is precious. Verification is non-negotiable. He closed the lid and stood a while at the window where darkness gathered like a tide and the porch light made a small island in it. Somewhere down canyon, a fox screamed odd, infant-like a sound that made you think of things you couldn't name. Upstairs, the pipes complained gently, and Ethan pictured Clara in steam and glass. He tried to recall the exact moment a wonder turned complicated. He couldn't, so he cataloged the tells instead. The way a hunter marked sign, a fragrance that didn't live in their house, receipts with round numbers and vague memo lines, a new laughter he had never seen her spend on him. He turned off the light and climbed the stairs like a man rehearsing answers for a question no one had asked out loud. The 3 weeks before, the party moved like a fast, bright river, and Ethan found himself smiling at Emily's daily scrum texts, the way she stacked tasks, refused scope creep, built redundancy into vendor timelines. She had a knack for orchestrating moving parts while making everyone feel like the hero of their own small scene. When she sent a 3D mock-up of the room and a seating plan that balanced egos like a bomb tech, Ethan wanted to frame it. Meanwhile, the mirror app flickered quietly to life when Clara's phone breathed on the home network. Ethan hadn't gone looking for monsters. He went looking for relief from the feeling that something had shifted. Relief didn't arrive. The message thread labeled M read like two colleagues pretending they weren't anything more until a turn of phrase hit a curve too smooth for coincidence. A calendar block with a flower emoji, a location ping at a Boulder high-rise with valet umbrellas, and a lobby that smelled like bergamot. Ethan told himself there were explanations that didn't insult either of them. He waited for one to appear, and then he waited some more. 5 days out, Emily called mid-morning voice wound tight as wire. Ben from the hotel just asked about the accessible entrance. She said words coming too fast. When I said yes, obviously yes, he said Clara had already told him not to worry about it because no one attending will need it. She paused, collecting breath. I thought maybe he mixed up notes, so I called Karen to cross-check the list. She got weird. Then she admitted Clara told her the party was for family and close friends only. And she said Emily stopped. She said I wasn't her real daughter anyway. Ethan stood. The room sharpened. Edges acquired teeth. He felt his heartbeat slow harden. It was the rhythm he recognized from bad mountain weather and bad business weather. Move carefully now. There are cliffs inside people. You spent 3 weeks building a celebration for her, he said, as much to load the truth into the air as to soothe his daughter. I'll get answers. After he calmed her, after he promised in those plain, heavy syllables that make fathers, his office door tipped open, and Clara flowed in on a scent that belonged to boutiques in neighborhoods without parking meters. Found you, she sang. Let's try that new place on Birch. People keep saying it's impossible to get a table. Ethan watched her the way you watch a horizon for thunderheads. We should talk about your birthday, he said. She brightened, then paused. We were keeping it a surprise, she said lightly. We were, he agreed, until Emily learned she isn't invited. A series of micro-expressions walked across Clara's face. Surprise, annoyance, calculation. I was going to talk to you. It's an adults-only kind of thing. Late dress code music she wouldn't enjoy. Ethan kept his voice almost gentle, the way you keep it with a spooked horse. The party she designed and I paid for. He let the number land. 2,800. She blinked. That's excessive. And she's not... The word fractured in her mouth. Ethan didn't rescue it. Not what he asked. Not my daughter. You're twisting. No, he said and stood. He had spent a lifetime being reasonable with unreasonable men. He had learned that the tone you pick at the start decides the road you walk. You get to decide who attends your party. I get to decide where I am that night. I won't be there. Neither will Emily. We'll send a gift. Clara's chin came up a notch. What will people think? Whatever you tell them, he said, and opened the door, because some moments are not conversations, they are exits. After she left, Ethan walked to the window and stared into a slope of aspen going silver in the wind. Rage, when it came, wasn't heat. It was cold clarity. The first time a guest had stiffed him on a 6-figure invoice, he had learned not to shout. He had learned to write the letter that got results. He would write one now, a different kind of letter, the kind that spoke in photographs and numbers and timestamps. The gift would be exactly what Clara had asked of the party for family and close friends, only family defined by loyalty, closeness defined by truth. He returned to his desk and sketched a list. Call Marcus about a courier, pull the phone captures into a clean timeline, ask Caleb for those vendor memos with fuzzy invoices, flag the ones with the same P.O. box, ping Peter Holt with the Boulder address. He'd get eyes and a date-stamped camera on the garage. Then Ethan sat for a long minute with his elbows on his knees and the heels of his hands pressed to his eyebrow bones. Anger wanted action instantly, dramatically. Experience wanted procedure. He chose experience. He opened a new document and wrote in simple language, as if explaining it to a board member who didn't believe in chairs or storms or the way a human being could bend themselves into a shape they didn't recognize. He titled it, "For the Record," saved it to the boring folder, and in the same deliberate hand with which he'd once reseated a doorframe at 30 below, began to line up the nails. On Clara's 50th birthday, the Cole Luxury Retreats Denver HQ felt more like a war room than an office. Ethan arrived early with Emily, both of them deliberately dressed down, an unspoken protest against the evening's planned glamour. Emily had tried to brush it off, insisting her father didn't need to cancel his presence just for her, but Ethan had been immovable. "If you aren't welcome, neither am I," he said, simple as stone. To soften it, he had already planned an alternative, not just dinner, but a pivot into the future. Over breakfast on the sunlit balcony of the office penthouse, he slid a folder toward Emily. "I want to formalize this," he said. Inside were sketches, budgets, and a bold header, Cole Immersive Adventures, a digital future. Emily's eyes widened as she skimmed. "You mean you actually want me to lead this? Not want. Need. VR previews, digital concierge, gamified memberships. This is the next wave, and you've been building pieces of it in your spare time." She felt a swell of both pride and fear, the two sensations mingling in a way that made her stomach fizz. "Then, I'll deliver a prototype within a month." Ethan reached across and tapped the folder. Then it settled. Director of Digital Innovation, official today. Her grin lit the room. A knock at the door interrupted Marcus. Ethan's longtime assistant carried a slim package wrapped in silver foil. "This just arrived. Courier said it needed to reach the party venue before noon." Ethan took it without a word. Emily raised an eyebrow. "But we're not going." Ethan unwrapped it just enough to check. Inside, a black velvet box held a flash drive. "We're not going," he confirmed. "But I did promise her a gift. This one's appropriate." Later, while Clara's soiree bloomed in a hotel ballroom lined with orchids and champagne towers, Karen, the best friend, slipped outside and texted Emily. "What did you two send?" Half the guests walked out after she opened it. Ethan, reading over Emily's shoulder, poured 2 whiskeys and smiled without warmth. "Looks like she got our present." At the party, Clara had opened the velvet box expecting jewelry. Instead, the USB played on the giant rented screen. First came a slideshow of high-definition images, Clara entering a Boulder condo late at night, kissing Michael Rowan in a shadowed restaurant corner. Then, screenshots of intimate texts, bland at first, then unmistakable. Next, spreadsheets, wire transfers from Cole Luxury Retreats accounts to unfamiliar shells. Finally, one last image, a photo of Ethan and Emily taken that very morning on the balcony, captioned in white letters, "Happy birthday from your real family. Enjoy the party we paid for." Guests murmured, some excused themselves, others stared in open discomfort. Clara's face drained of blood. Later that night, she came home pale, shaking, finding Ethan calmly nursing his drink by the fire. "How long have you known?" she asked, voice brittle. "Long enough," he replied. "But not as long as you've been lying." "I can explain." "I'm sure you can," Ethan cut her off, "but explanations don't erase evidence. The only thing that matters now is what comes next." His tone made clear mercy was not on the table. Clara moved out the next morning with 2 designer suitcases and her silver BMW, refusing Ethan's offer of movers. She drove toward Boulder without looking back. Emily watched from the upstairs landing. "Are you okay?" she asked quietly. Ethan stood in the doorway, arms crossed. "I am." This was inevitable. Emily wheeled closer. "What happens now? Now we find out how deep the rot goes." Ethan called Caleb Morgan his COO and confidant, a man who had been with him since the first lodge. Caleb's voice carried the clipped calm of an ex-soldier. 3-year audit. Absolute discretion. Leave nothing unexamined, Ethan ordered. This about Mrs. Cole's exit, Caleb asked. It's about everything connected to it. Next, Ethan dialed Sophia Grant, his lawyer. I need divorce papers drawn immediately. Grounds, she asked. Infidelity and financial misconduct. Stack every count possible. The prenup is airtight, she said, but I'll need documentation. You'll have more than enough, Ethan replied. The following weeks turned into a grind of revelations. Caleb uncovered irregular vendor invoices, consulting fees to shell entities, padded charges to contractors, bogus expenses disguised as retreats. Each line item was another thread leading back to Clara. Meanwhile, Peter Holt, the investigator, confirmed the affair and exposed Michael's history. A man who married wealthy women, drained them, and vanished, leaving lawsuits and bankruptcies behind. Rowan's been doing this for years, Peter reported. He lures targets, extracts money, then moves on. Clara wasn't coerced. She was a willing partner. Caleb laid out a report across Ethan's desk. Total loss is about $650,000. Some funneled through Rowan's shells, some to fake charities. About $120,000 transferred to an offshore account in Costa Rica tied to Clara's signature. Corporate espionage, Ethan asked. Evidence is circumstantial. We'll need more to prove theft of trade secrets, but the patterns line up with proposals that somehow leaked. Ethan nodded grimly. His phone buzzed. Emily, hesitant. Dad? Mom asked to meet me. Says it's not what it looks like. Ethan's jaw tightened. Clara hadn't dared approach him directly, but she was reaching for Emily. Listen, he said carefully. Truth doesn't live in apologies. It lives in evidence. If you meet her, do it with your eyes open. That evening in a cafe across town, Clara arrived stripped of glamour jeans, hair pulled back, makeup minimal. Thanks for coming, she said to Emily before noticing Ethan at the next table. I didn't know he'd be here. Did you think I'd let you corner her alone? Ethan's voice was calm but sharp enough to cut glass. Clara spun her story. Michael had dazzled her with promises, blurred business into romance, then threatened exposure when she tried to pull away. He manipulated me, she insisted. I was scared. And the birthday party, telling the planner no wheelchair access, Ethan asked flatly. Clara faltered. That was his idea. He said family complicates things. Emily's eyes burned. You uninvited me from a party I planned. Clara reached out, but Emily pulled back. Ethan leaned forward. What do you want? Protection? Leniency? I'll give you everything, emails, accounts, meeting records, if you help me get away from him. Ethan studied her for a long moment. I don't trade in stories, only in proof. Give me all of it, then I'll decide what protection looks like. Clara nodded, desperate. Ethan didn't. He already knew protection was the last thing she was going to get. The next morning, Caleb dropped a binder onto Ethan's desk, the kind of binder whose weight told a story before the first page was opened. She wasn't just complicit, he said, tapping the cover with a blunt finger. She orchestrated it, authorized payments to shell corporations, pushed invoices through herself. This wasn't passive. It was deliberate. Ethan flipped through emails with Clara's initials, green-lighting transactions requests for expedited wires, a trail of breadcrumbs leading not to carelessness, but to design. So much for her Michael made me do it defense, he muttered. Caleb pointed to the graphs. If she'd been coerced, we'd see panic big transfers, odd spikes. Instead, it's slow, consistent, patterned, classic embezzlement curve. Ethan shut the binder jaw tight. She dug her own grave. But I'm not stopping at divorce. I want justice. They didn't just skim profits. They tried to rip apart the foundation I built for Emily. I'll make sure they choke on what they thought was theirs. That afternoon, Ethan arranged a meeting with Clara at a roadside cafe halfway between Denver and Boulder. The place smelled of burned coffee and fried onions, the kind of nowhere space where secrets got confessed. Clara arrived carefully composed, jeans, sweater, hair pulled into a neat bun as if dressing down might soften the sharpness of her sins. She slid into the booth with a laptop bag and a stack of folders. I brought everything, she said. Bank statements, emails, account numbers. And what do you want in return? Ethan asked, voice even. Protection. A fairer settlement. Michael, he's dangerous. Ethan's expression didn't change, but his eyes sharpened. Let's talk about the Costa Rica property. A flicker. Her pupils contracted. What property? The one you wired $120,000 into from our joint account. The one listed under a shell company tied to your passport. Color drained from her cheeks. I can explain, like you explained why you told the event planner not to bother with wheelchair access, or why you almost said Emily wasn't my real daughter. Ethan leaned in. Here's the truth, Clara. You're not negotiating from strength, you're drowning. The only way you walk away with anything is by giving me every single detail about Rowan. Clara's voice cracked. You wouldn't hang me out to dry. It would hurt your company's image. Ethan let the silence stretch, then said softly, Try me. For 2 hours he pressed, and Clara, under the weight of inevitability, spilled dates, names, meetings in hotel lobbies, wire instructions scribbled on napkins, passwords she thought she'd buried. Ethan didn't interrupt, only wrote eyes cold and efficient. When she finally slumped back against the booth trembling, he had more than evidence of theft. He had a roadmap to the bigger game. Rowan wasn't just bleeding Ethan. He was mapping the entire luxury adventure industry, siphoning ideas, selling data to competitors, building a rival empire on stolen bones. Does he know about the divorce papers? Ethan asked at last. Clara nodded. And the USB at the party, yeah, he was furious. Said you'd ruined everything, that we'd have to accelerate the final extraction. Ethan's pen paused. Define final extraction. Pull everything left, sell contacts, disappear abroad. Clara's hands shook as she gripped her mug. He wants me to follow. Ethan slid his notes into a folder and stood. Here's what you'll do. Tell him you convinced me to settle outside the prenup, that I'm open to a conversation with both of you. Set up a meeting. Clara stared. He'll never believe greed beats doubt every time, Ethan said, laying cash on the table. And when he believes, he'll get exactly what he deserves. Clara's lips trembled, but she nodded. Ethan walked out into the hard Colorado sunlight, the sky an impossible blue. He had all he needed: proof, leverage, and bait. The hunt was no longer about discovery. It was about timing. The meeting was scheduled for Friday at Ethan's Denver office, a choice that looked neutral on paper but was nothing of the sort. Every angle of that glass-walled building was home turf. The lobby guards knew him by first name. The conference rooms had been wired for security reviews long before Clara's betrayal, and every square foot radiated his control. The 3 days leading up to it stretched taut with preparation. In Caleb's office, the walls were plastered with flowcharts, arrows, and names. You're sure about this path? Sophia asked, arms crossed, sharp black suit making her look like a blade in human form. We already have enough for prosecutors. We could press charges today. Ethan shook his head. Courts are slow, messy, and unpredictable. Every headline hurts the company, hurts Emily's future. This way is clean. Caleb tapped the table, and Clara Ethan's jaw flexed. Her self-interest aligns with ours, at least for now. That's all the trust she gets. The night before the meeting, Emily appeared at Ethan's door, a printout of her VR schematics in her lap. Let me be there tomorrow, she said. If it's about the company, I want to face him too. Ethan crouched beside her chair, steady hands on her armrests. Not this time. It's not about protecting you. It's about strategy. Rowan doesn't know how involved you are. That's an advantage, and I won't waste it. She exhaled hard, but nodded. Friday arrived crisp, a Colorado blue sky day that mocked the tension simmering beneath it. Ethan dressed like a man going into battle, charcoal, suit, steel, watch the tie Julia had once called his war colors. At 10 sharp, Clara arrived, posture stiff, nerves betrayed by the way she twisted her ringless fingers. Stick to the script, Ethan said as he led her into the conference room. She gave the smallest nod. 20 minutes later, Michael Rowan swept in with the charm of a man used to doors opening before he touched them. Tailored navy suit, gold cufflinks, a smile practiced in mirrors. They all sat, Ethan at the head, Sophia on his right, Caleb in the corner like a sentinel. Rowan leaned back with the ease of someone who believed the battlefield was his. I understand we can work something out, he began. Ethan slid a folder across the table. Inside, transfers, screenshots, shell companies, photos of late-night rendezvous. It's all here, Ethan said evenly. Rowan flipped through, lips curling in feigned amusement. If there were irregularities, I'm sure Clara can clarify. As for our relationship, well, these things happen. Perhaps if you'd been more attentive. Ethan's voice cut like glass. We know everything. The prior marriages, the scams, Costa Rica. Rowan's eyes hardened. Are you threatening me? Not a threat, Sophia said crisply. Evidence, enough to file federal charges tomorrow. Rowan's face turned toward Clara, cold. You told them everything. Her eyes darted. Her voice dropped. The truth. It's over. No one's overboard yet, Ethan said, calm and lethal. That's why we're here. The terms are simple. Full restitution. You sever ties to this industry and then you disappear. Rowan let out a humorless laugh. And if I don't? Ethan pressed a button on the phone. The door opened and Caleb entered with a heavy box, dropping it on the table with a thud. Inside, copies of documents, backups of hard drives, a map of everything. Imagine what the FBI would make of this, Ethan said. Rowan's mask slipped for a beat. Then he smiled again, a predator recognizing a stronger one. What exactly do you want me to sign? An hour later, the paperwork was complete, signatures neat and binding. 48 hours to return every cent, Ethan said. Any deviation and contingencies trigger. Rowan adjusted his cufflinks, regaining his swagger. You'll have your money. After he left, Clara whispered, So it's over. Ethan's eyes narrowed. That part is. Now comes phase 2. Her brow creased. What do you mean? Ethan leaned back, voice low and certain. I promised no criminal charges if he complied, and I'll keep that. What happens next isn't about law, it's about consequences. He stood, and Clara suddenly understood she was not spared, only postponed. 48 hours later, nearly $700,000 came trickling back through a web of wires, escrow accounts and reversals. Caleb delivered the update with the calm efficiency of a soldier reporting on logistics. He's complying, he said. I thought he'd bolt. Ethan didn't look up from the report spread across his desk. He thinks he's clever. He believes this is the end game. What he doesn't know is that every transfer maps out more of his network. Clara was in temporary housing now, living out of carefully curated suitcases reduced to what the prenup allowed, $200,000, and her personal belongings. Ethan never bothered to check in. She wasn't his concern anymore, not really. His eyes were fixed on the bigger predator, Rowan. 10 days later, Ethan summoned Emily into the Denver office, a space filled with maps, contracts, and the faint smell of pine from the custom wood desk. How's the VR build? He asked. She smirked. Functional demo is live, but I'm guessing this isn't about progress reports. Correct, he said, pushing a stack of documents toward her. This is the real plan. Across the table, Emily studied flowcharts that showed Shell Corporation's offshore accounts and highlighted in red the Costa Rica property. This place is his lifeboat, Ethan explained. The escape hatch he thinks no one knows about. He's funneled over $2 million through it. Emily's brow furrowed. So how do we sink it? Ethan leaned back. We bait him. Your VR project is our Trojan horse, an exclusive investment revolutionary, the kind of shiny thing he can't resist. He and his associates will claw to get in. The weeks that followed were a blur of quiet preparation. Ethan and Caleb built coal immersive adventures on paper, squeaky clean enough to pass scrutiny but layered with legal traps that turned greed into liability. Emily perfected her demo, polishing every line of code until the experience felt like stepping into another world. When the showcase came in Aspen, the room filled with curated investors, bankers, adventurers, even a Hollywood name or two. Lights dimmed and Emily's VR simulation transported them into a canyon sunrise so real, some gasped aloud. When the demo ended, applause rang through the chalet. Ethan stepped forward announcing, "We are opening a limited round, 500,000 minimum projected returns north of 300% within 18 months. Invitations by referral only." The bait glittered. Predictably, Michael Rowan sidled up at the bar, drink in hand, smile too wide. "Impressive," he said. "Your daughter's a prodigy. I want in." Ethan swirled his whiskey and answered evenly, "Send a formal proposal." Rowan chuckled, but the hunger in his eyes gave him away. After he walked off, Caleb leaned close. He bit. Ethan's lips tightened into a smile. Greed always wins. Costa Rica. "We've secured the holding company that controls the deed," Caleb confirmed. "He has no idea. And the offshore accounts? 7 of them. Counsel is moving to freeze on suspicion of laundering." Ethan's voice dropped to a whisper. "Perfect. Phase 2. The following morning, Clara called, her tone tight. "You invited Michael." After everything, Ethan's voice was cool. "Money is money. If he's fool enough to invest, I'll take it, unless you're saying I should exclude him." Clara hesitated. "You'd actually work with him. I separate personal from business," Ethan replied. "If you want in your network could help." The line went quiet. Clara caught off guard by the offer. "You're serious?" Completely. The divorce continues. But business is business. Come by tomorrow. When she left his office that afternoon, Peter Holt stepped out from the shadows of the lobby. She'll call him immediately, he said. Ethan's jaw tightened. Good. Let him believe she's his inside woman. When he buys that, the trap closes. He looked toward the mountains rising against the winter sky. Rowan thought he was circling prey. In reality, he was walking straight into a cage, one built with contract signatures and his own greed. 2 days later, Clara entered Ethan's office dressed with forced composure, clutching her handbag as if it might shield her. She managed a smile that didn't touch her eyes. "Thanks for agreeing to see me," she said, settling into the chair opposite him. "I've thought about your offer." Ethan steepled his hands, face unreadable. "And I'll do it. I'll be part of the venture. But," she hesitated, glancing down, "if the divorce is inevitable, I need to know where I stand in the company." "The divorce is personal. The venture is business," Ethan replied, clipped and precise. "You'll be named Investor Relations Advisor. You have contacts that could prove useful." Clara's shoulders eased slightly. "Because of my network." "Exactly," Ethan said. "Your social circle is still valuable." They discussed salary responsibilities and reporting lines for nearly an hour. On paper, the arrangement seemed generous. Just as Clara began to relax, Ethan added casually, "There's one more thing. You'll be the liaison to Rowan. If he invests, you'll manage him directly." Clara froze, color draining. "You really mean to take his money?" "I mean to control him," Ethan said, "unless you're saying you can't handle it." She forced a quick shake of her head. "No, I can." "Then prove it. Consider this a chance to win back some trust." When she left, Caleb stepped inside, holding a small recorder. "She called Rowan the moment she got in her car," he reported. "We captured everything. She told him you were unusually open, that she'd be his eyes inside." Ethan gave a thin smile. "Perfect. Time to move forward." That week, the structure of Cole Immersive Adventures came online, a labyrinth of subsidiaries, escrow accounts, and contractual safeguards. To outsiders, it looked like airtight protection of intellectual property. In reality, it was a financial snare fund. Funds could flow in easily, but were nearly impossible to extract without triggering audits and freezes. As expected, Rowan lunged first. His application arrived with a pledge of $1.5 million, far above the minimum. He believed the size of his stake would grant control. He had no idea he was feeding the very machinery designed to choke him. Within days, 11 other investors signed on. A launch ceremony was arranged at the Denver headquarters, billed as exclusive and invitation only. On the appointed morning, a dozen polished figures gathered, including Rowan and several of his closest allies. Ethan welcomed them with calm authority. "Thank you for your trust. Your initial funds will be secured in escrow for 30 days. During that time, you'll have exclusive access to our VR systems and progress reports. Afterward, the capital will be fully allocated." Investors nodded approvingly, convinced of the transparency. Rowan signed with a flourish, smug, in the belief that he had infiltrated Ethan's empire. After the ceremony, Ethan slipped into a side office where Emily was watching via secure feed. All 12 signed, she reported. 3 of them tied directly to Rowan. Exactly as planned, Ethan said. "Now we monitor." Over the next week, Rowan's accounts began to sputter. Transfers flagged as suspicious, offshore holdings frozen under security clauses of the contracts he himself had signed. The Costa Rica villa he considered untouchable was already under new ownership, quietly deeded to a conservation trust. When Rowan stormed into Ethan's office days later, his polish had frayed. His suit was wrinkled, his eyes bloodshot. "My accounts are locked. This isn't coincidence. You engineered this." Ethan remained calm. "You read the terms. Security protocols are mandatory to protect our technology. If your accounts are flagged, there must be irregularities." Rowan's fist hit the table. "This is payback for Clara." "No," Ethan said evenly. "This is business. If your money is clean, the review will clear it. If you try to withdraw early, the contracts give us 6 months of full financial oversight. Your choice." Rowan's face drained, fury and fear warring behind his eyes. "You set me up. I protected my company," Ethan corrected, "and you trapped yourself." The following week, federal investigators received a neatly packaged dossier, evidence not only of Rowan's laundering, but of 3 other investors tied to fraud. Clara's name surfaced too, not as victim, but as collaborator. On the day of reckoning, Rowan, Clara, and the implicated partners were summoned to what they believed was an emergency strategy meeting. Instead, they walked into a conference room filled with Ethan, Caleb, Sophia, Peter, Holt, and two agents from the Financial Crimes Division. "Where are the others?" Rowan demanded. "The legitimate investors are elsewhere," Ethan said. "This meeting is for those who chose crime over integrity." As indictments were read aloud, Rowan raged. "You baited me. This whole venture was a trap." Ethan's gaze was unflinching. "The venture is real. The profits are real. But you treated it like a con. You turned yourself into prey." Clara, trembling, whispered, "So every kindness, every invitation, all of it was a setup." Ethan's voice cut cold. "As real as the marriage you turned into a cover for betrayal. The difference is my plan is legal." As agents cuffed them, Emily rolled forward from the back of the room, her eyes locked on Clara. "Funny, isn't it? You wouldn't let me come to your party, but the technology I built is what destroyed you. Dad always saw me for who I am, chair or no chair. You never did. That's why you lost everything." Clara's lips parted, but no words came. Rowan cursed as they were led out. Ethan placed a steady hand on Emily's shoulder. "It's done," he said quietly. Almost. The indictments hit the press like a thunderclap. Headlines blared, "Rowan fraud ring exposed in Colorado luxury venture scheme." Stock markets whispered, industry blogs speculated, and within 48 hours, Ethan Cole's name was trending not as a victim, not as a man humiliated, but as the visionary who had dismantled one of the slickest white-collar predators in the sector. Cole Luxury Retreats bookings spiked as the scandal spread. People loved a story where the good guy fought back. Rowan and his partners were denied bail. Clara, less entangled but still culpable, was offered a deal full cooperation in exchange for a lighter sentence. The day before she entered her plea, she asked to see Ethan. He agreed, meeting her in the sterile quiet of a courthouse conference room. Clara looked 10 years older, makeup unable to mask the wear. "I don't expect forgiveness," she began, voice brittle. I need you to know it wasn't all a lie. Some of it was real, with you, with Emily." Ethan's face was carved in stone. "If it were real, you wouldn't have sold it out for greed." She flinched. "I've told prosecutors everything, every scheme, every detail. Michael will never breathe free air again. Maybe that's my penance. That's theirs to decide," Ethan said, standing. "My only concern now is Emily and the future she deserves." Clara's eyes watered. "Tell her I'm sorry." He paused at the door. "I will, but apologies don't rebuild what you broke." He left without looking back. 2 months later, Rowan was sentenced to 18 years in federal prison. Clara received 4. The Costa Rica villa was seized, auctioned, and ultimately signed over to a conservation fund. Nearly $6.5 million were clawed back through forfeiture and restitution. For Ethan, it wasn't about the money. It was about erasing every trace of the rot. Spring found Emily unveiling Cole Immersive Adventures in a sleek Denver loft. Investors, journalists, and a handful of curious celebrities donned headsets and were transported into worlds Emily had coded late at night, kayaking down a digital Amazon scaling cliffs in Yosemite, watching northern lights explode over Icelandic skies. Applause thundered when the demo ended. Ethan stood back, letting her take the spotlight. This was her stage, her creation. That evening, the two of them sat on the porch of their mountain home, whiskey for him, sparkling cider for her. The air smelled of thawing earth and pine sap. "You pulled off the impossible," Ethan said, watching her tuck a blanket over her legs. "You built something the world hasn't seen before." Emily smiled, a little shy. "I couldn't have done it without you. Not just the money, the belief. You always made me feel like I wasn't defined by my chair." Ethan's gaze softened. "You aren't. You're defined by the fire in you, and that's something no betrayal can touch." A silence settled, comfortable, broken only by the distant call of an owl. Emily glanced over. "Lawyers say Clara wants to see me." Should I? Ethan studied the horizon where the last streak of orange melted into night. "That's your choice. But remember, some doors once closed are better left that way." Emily nodded slowly. "Then I'll leave it shut." They raised their glasses, the stars beginning to needle through the indigo sky. "To the future," Ethan said. "To the future," Emily echoed. And for the first time in months, the weight slid off his shoulders. The house no longer echoed with suspicion. The company no longer carried the stain of betrayal. What remained was solid: his daughter, his legacy, and a clear horizon. He thought back to that birthday party, to the velvet box and the USB that detonated a marriage. Strange how a gift meant for destruction had become the key to renewal. Because what he truly gained wasn't revenge, it was clarity. Lesson learned: in a world brimming with ambition and deceit, only two things are worth guarding with every ounce of strength: family and honor. Everything else is replaceable. But betray either, and the price is everything you thought you had.